looks like they're having a nice chat.
Dragon Age is a saga that I have played many times, almost once a year. With a new sequel coming soon, of course I started playing it again, as many old and new players are likely doing. I'm a traditionalist, so I started from the beginning, Dragon Age Origins. In fact, the first video on this channel came from that playthrough. I had a great time with that game, just like the previous 14 times I played it. It left me feeling energized, ready to move on to the next chapter of this epic adventure that was just beginning and... oh, it's you. Dragon Age 2 is a difficult game. Not because it's the Dark Souls of Dragon Ages, but because it fails to live up to the high expectations set by Origins. It feels like a smaller world, reusing a lot its few maps, recycling too many assets from Origins. It lacks depth in skills and tactics, and at higher difficulty levels, it can feel unfair, forcing you to replay certain battles multiple times. All of this makes it feel a bit repetitive after a few hours. You can clearly see the rushed development. Thanks EA, you did it again. And each time I reach Dragon Age 2, I wonder, should I just skip it? Should I go straight to Inquisition? Nothing that Dragon Age Keep can't fix. But I realized that despite thinking about this regularly, I never actually do it. I never skip Dragon Age 2. And the truth is, playing through it has never discouraged me from continuing the saga. So it must have some redeeming qualities, right? And for the first time in all these years, I sat down to think and write about it. Why shouldn't you skip Dragon Age 2? The first reason revolves around its central conflict, mages versus Templars. For those unfamiliar, in Dragon Age, the situation with mages isn't like other fantasy worlds. Here, they are like the X-Men, people with immense power, capable of doing great good, but also great evil. As a result, people fear them, discriminate against them, and try to control their freedom through Templars, who are like sentinels. Soldiers specialized in conflict management, but with little emotional intelligence. If you don't know about X-Men, maybe think of mages as vampires from Twilight. I don't know. The point is, it's a tricky situation. This social context is introduced in Origins, but isn't a central focus. However, in Dragon Age 2, it is. It's the main conflict. Throughout the game, we complete various missions that show different sides of it. Mages using their power for good, like helping to heal the poor in the deeply unequal city of Kirkwall. On the other hand, some mages use their power to commit terrible crimes, some of which impact the protagonist on a deeply personal level. There is even a terrorist mage, who might just be the same one killing people. Meanwhile, you see oppressive Templars who treat all mages the same, even killing them indiscriminately, while others believe in a healthier relationship with mages, even forming friendships. You also experience the personal story of the protagonist, depending on whether you choose to play as a mage or the sibling of one. These tensions build throughout the game until they explode, literally, forcing you to take a side. Having this context fresh in your mind sets you up perfectly for Inquisition, where this conflict is at the core of the story. Playing Dragon Age 2 helps you as a player understand this dispute more fully, adding weight to one of the key decisions in the sequel, where you must choose a side again, this time with a new protagonist. But you, the player, remain the same, already knowing the good and evil in each side. The second reason is them, your companions. Bioware has a long history of giving us lovable companion characters in all their RPGs: Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Knights of the Old Republic, and Baldur's Gate. After playing all these games, I have to say that the companions in Dragon Age 2 are not just some of the best in the saga, but in the studio's history. When we talk about character development, the most important rule is that the characters shouldn't say who they are, but rather show it through their actions. Dragon Age 2 excels at this. Each companion has a distinct personality, shaped by their background, and they remain consistent with it. This is supported by well-written dialogues, some genuinely funny.
What compels you to spin these ridiculous tales?
I love the sound of my own voice. And I'm a compulsive liar. Honestly, I don't know. It's just something I do.
And others deeply profound.
Do you know what I remember? When he read to me, stupid things, dragons and heroes. He wouldn't turn a page until I reached over and took his hand. That big man made every step of the story my choice. I loved that. He died of the wasting in a Denerim ward. Those last weeks, I read to him. I had to take his hand to turn the pages, and I couldn't tell if he was too weak, or if it was the old game. He smiled at that, at his big girl.
Also, they don't feel like characters who only exist for the protagonist blindly following him. If they disagree with you, they will let you know, whether through a scowl, a witty passive-aggressive remark, or by stabbing you in the back. Literally. How you respond to events and the choices you make will shape your relationship with them, and you can even end up quite alone by the end of the game. This must be the system they put the most effort into during the game's short development period, because even after many playthroughs, I'm still discovering new dialogues. This dynamic encourages you to try different combinations of companions for each mission, just to see how they react to your decisions. As for romances, they fall a bit short, but in terms of character building and consistency, they did an incredible job, especially with Varric and Fenris. Both with very different styles of humor, it still manages to bring more than a few smiles to my face. The third reason is the protagonist. Yes, I know Hawke is a sensitive subject in the community. We came from Origins, where the protagonist was a blank canvas we could freely mold into whatever role we wanted. But in Dragon Age 2, Hawke is a much more developed human protagonist, with a background and less room for customization, and therefore less freedom for role-playing. But rather than seeing this as a bad thing, I personally prefer to see it as just different. In this game, we take on the role of Hawke, not ourselves or the original character we might have in mind. It's more similar to what we do with Shepard in Mass Effect or Geralt in The Witcher. We assume the role of a pre-built character and give them nuances and direction in their story. Once we make peace with this, Hawke becomes quite an entertaining character, as we begin to understand their story and make decisions based on what they will do, not necessarily what we will do. This makes it a less personal experience, but allows us to connect more with their story. That's where the importance of playing Dragon Age 2 before Inquisition comes in. In Inquisition, one of the hardest decisions involved choosing what to do with Hawke. If I didn't know them, that decision wouldn't have had much weight. But when you do, it becomes one of the toughest, especially if Alistair is involved too. Those who have played will understand my pain. Going through Dragon Age 2 and embracing Hawke's role adds depth to Inquisition. Plus, if you choose to play as the witty, smart-ass Hawke, you will hear some of the most hilarious and ridiculous lines, even at the most inappropriate moments.
Can I help you?
I've been stung by a bee. I think it's swelling. Maker, am I dying?
The swelling is almost as big as your head.
If I die, make sure the world knows I died at Chateau Haine.
The fourth reason is the knowledge. In Inquisition, many concepts are introduced that assume you already know them, but they are barely mentioned in Origins. However, they are addressed in Dragon Age 2. Unless you want to spend hours reading the codex, it's more fun to learn by playing. For instance, the Qunari as a society and religion are introduced in Origins through your companion Sten, but in Dragon Age 2 they are much more relevant, even serving as antagonists in Act 2 and companions in one of the DLCs. I miss you, Talis. Their differences become much more evident, though they are not inherently evil. The game also introduces red lyrium and its effect on people. It makes the skin a little itchy. Another example is in the Legacy DLC, where we learn more about the Grey Wardens and their morally grey side, willing to do anything to stop the Darkspawn threat, far from the heroic, legendary image presented in Origins. Additionally, Dragon Age 2 introduces us to Cassandra and Varric, two characters who are key from the start of Inquisition. Knowing how they met and what they seek makes them easier to understand. However, the biggest contribution of Dragon Age 2 and its Legacy DLC is the introduction of Corypheus, the main villain in Inquisition, who many consider the weakest point of its narrative. But having met and greeted him amicably to death in Dragon Age 2 helps set your expectations where they should be. He's powerful? Yes. There are far greater threats than him? Yes. He loves monologuing? Fuck yes. He doesn't become much more than what we saw in Dragon Age 2. But knowing him beforehand helps prevent disappointment, allowing us to enjoy the rest of the narrative, which touches on much bigger and more interesting themes. In short, Dragon Age 2 introduces a lot of knowledge that's worth knowing or refreshing before continuing the saga. And finally, the fifth reason, the gameplay. It's really polished, complex, easy to learn, but hard to... No, seriously, it's a bit meh. But it does serve as a transition between Origins and Inquisition. Origins has a much more tactical focus, which some people miss in Dragon Age 2, as it has fewer strategic options and is more action-oriented, although it doesn't particularly excel at that either. This doesn't mean the gameplay is bad, just that it lacks some depth. But then we get to the gameplay of Inquisition, which improves the action elements of Dragon Age 2 and brings back some of the tactical features from Origins. Even though I think it's the weakest gameplay in the series, Dragon Age 2 still serves as a good bridge between the other two games, making the transition feel more natural. It's not necessary to play Dragon Age 2 for this reason alone, but it's worth mentioning. In summary, I understand all the reasons why some people still criticize Dragon Age 2, and I share many of them. But regardless of whether you are a new player just entering this world or a veteran returning for the release of Veilguard, I truly believe this game is still worth playing, especially if you are going through the entire saga. It's a game that had everything stacked against it, the perfect formula for disaster. And yet, they managed to create a more than respectable game. Of course, this doesn't mean I endorse the exploitative practices of the industry, but rather I see it as a proof that predatory strategies are depriving us of the real potential of many video games. On the one hand, I believe it was precisely the mistakes in Dragon Age 2 that made Inquisition great. incorporating many of the ideas that couldn't be included in the prequel due to its mere 1-year development cycle, compared to nearly 4 years for Inquisition. Bioware hasn't been free from mistakes since this game, but I like to believe that, as in the past, they can learn from them and continue to surprise us. Dragon Age 2 is probably the worst Dragon Age, and honestly, I hope it stays that way until the saga concludes, because if that's the case, it will mean that even at its lowest point, the world of Dragon Age was still worth exploring.
Must have been a terrible burden, much like the burden you've assumed.
I do what I can. Sometimes it doesn't seem like enough.
You know, your father tried to help people the same way. Tried to fix trouble he saw in others. The best of him is still with you. The best of all of us. It's what makes you try so hard. You will always have that. We will always be family. It'll be all right.
Well, that's the end of this video. I hope to finish the one on Inquisition before Veilguard is released, but we will see if Adult Life allows it. And you, what do you think of Dragon Age 2? What aspects of it do you believe are worth highlighting? Leave it in the comments. There are already plenty of negative reviews on Metacritic, so let's talk about some positive things for a change. In any case, I sincerely hope this video was worth your time, and really thank you for stopping by. You can also subscribe and give it a like if you want, and if not, it's okay. Maybe next time. Take care, don't stay up too late, drink water and all that stuff. See you in the next video. Bye!